Hey, how's it going, guys? Mr. EMP here for MrEyeMakePlays TV, and I'm just loving how Spellbreak is a different kind of battle royale. Well, as different as you can get when you have the words battle royale in the genre description. Ultimately, you're working to be the last one alive, like in any battle royale. But the path there is far different than maybe anything your average BR player has experienced. Shit just hits different, literally. Everything is projectile here. To any BR vet, the concept is simple. Build a kit on the fly and use it to kill them before they kill you. But the reality here is that success takes more than just being able to pull off clean headshots. Spellbreak isn't an easy game. I've heard it said by high-level players that it can be pretty uninviting for newer vow breakers just entering the HoloLands. And I can't say that that's entirely wrong. What I can say is that bridging that gap is much easier when given some direction. So here's some direction for that ass. Today I'm going to give you 5 tips for new Spellbreak players. Tip number 1, put things in perspective, aka choose your playstyle. Now this sounds like a weird tip, but for a new player just hopping into Spellbreak, it's going to help out immensely. At first glance, the different gauntlets and their abilities can be overwhelming and make this game difficult to approach. Someone coming from battle royales like Apex Legends or Warzone can read a gauntlet's description and still not have the best grasp on what each one does and is used for. The first thing that you're going to want to do is go into the practice mode and play around with each gauntlet. Use the primary fire and the sorcery for the 6 classes, and after a while you'll start to notice that their functions are more familiar than you might think. Each weapon has a familiar enough counterpart in regular gun games, and that should help you choose what you're going to implement in the live environment. I chose to use Tempest because that weapon is the closest thing to an SMG this game has to offer. It fires speedy projectiles at short range that, when landed properly, can eat up a health bar. Toxicologist's primary is a shotgun that at point blank range can do massive damage, especially when stacked with an invisibility rune. Frostborn is a sniper class built for long range engagement and third parties. Conduit is a laser gun similar in my mind to that of Overwatch's Zarya, minus the hit scan element, though Conduit is the closest thing to hit scan. Fire is a grenade launcher that does bonus damage over time with a direct hit, but can certainly do splash damage. Stone? Well, Stone is like that one shotgun in Modern Warfare that can murder someone across the map. These are the primary fires, of course. In a game like Spellbreak, where everything can feel so different, it can be a good idea for players to latch onto a concept they're familiar with to succeed in the short term. The sorceries add interesting elements to the kits and require a bit more creativity to use effectively. Which brings me to my next tip. Number 2, be creative. Now Spellbreak is a battle royale that's just oozing with creativity, right? So it makes sense that to succeed in this game, you need to be creative with your build, your playstyle, and your overall thought process. On a base level, you and your team want to be creative with your combinations when you first start out. One of the coolest things about picking up Spellbreak was taking 2 gauntlets and seeing if and how they interact. Most times, they do interact to amazing results. Fights can take a while in this game, unless you and your team start throwing flaming boulders or shooting dragonfire tornadoes at people. Also, remember that you can use one ability for multiple things. The Tempest Tornado, for example, does no damage on its own. Most times, you use it in conjunction with another gauntlet to gain the edge in combat. I say another gauntlet because it doesn't have to be a teammate's gauntlet. You can use your tornado as a sort of defensive shield that can eat an opponent's attacks. It can slow them down in mid-pursuit, and in some cases it can do some damage. If they insist on spamming attacks while chasing you down, a well-placed tornado can help them dig their own grave. When taking into account talents, runes, leveling skills, and sorceries, there are multiple ways to approach each class. I'm again going to recommend playing around with what's available to you in the practice area to get an idea of what works for you. I have a friend who is a toxicologist main, but doesn't use the Invis rune like everyone else does. He discovered that he liked to use the runic fluency talent along with a flight rune to turn himself into a strafe bomber, flying across the battlefield laying gas clouds down for me to ignite. I discovered that as a Tempest, I can use the wind jump mechanic at the end of a dash to augment my momentum. I combine this with the fervor talent to up my rate of fire, allowing me to add it even further for much more height and distance. This came from playing around with different builds and getting a feel for how these talents can complement a class. Creativity is the key to all of that, and if you start to think outside of the box, you'll see yourself winning more and more fights. But before you start winning more and more fights, let's be honest, you're going to lose a lot of them. And here's where tip number 3 comes in. Tip number 3, don't be a coward, aka live, die, and live again. Now, one of the main criticisms of the Battle Royale genre is how punishing it can be. You only get one shot at victory, and a lot of players don't like it when that shot comes and goes at the hands of yet another Stone Shaper. There's actual data that you can look up that says players who do good at games keep playing those games. People who don't do good tend to find something else to play, something that they're good at. Spellbreak tries to mitigate this a bit by making the first few games bot heavy. It keeps the younglings engaged as they run to Reddit in the Discord to post, "I won my first game," and we all laugh. But at the end of the day, the core of this game is combat, and smashing a couple of jobbers doesn't mean you're ready for the main card. You're going to run into players from the very beginning of your time with Spellbreak who are going to delete you at every turn. Stick with it. This is a concept that you can apply anywhere in life, honestly. To get good, you're going to have to practice. That's just how life is unless you're James Franco or Donald Glover. They say it takes 800 hours of practice to achieve mastery. Now, I'm not saying I know who they are or that you should go and drop 800 hours on Spellbreak, but I am saying that you're not getting closer to that 800-hour mark by hiding in a bush hoping you don't get worked and thinking that somehow you can get off a lucky shot to make off with the victory. Get out there and fight. Carefully. There's a thin line between aggressive and stupid, and you want to ride it as best you can. Worst case scenario, you challenge the wrong hombre to a duel, he magically mauls you, and you end up back at the lobby ready to do it all over again. And you should do it all over again. Do it as many times as you need to until you start seeing your damage numbers go up. Don't focus on exiles, survival time, or even securing the dub. Your focus should be on engaging and landing as many shots as possible. You can't run before you walk. You can't kill before you can land shots. You can't land shots unless you're fighting. You have to start somewhere. Tip number 4. Choose your battlefield, aka use the environment. So it's easy to take the map for granted in these sorts of games, but that's always a mistake. Multiplayer arenas are almost always designed in a way that skilled players are able to use their advantage to give them an edge. From the OG days of Halo and Call of Duty to the new age hits like Valorant or Call of Duty, the fact that the maps are dangerous tools to utilize in combat remains the same. That being said, the map here isn't just window dressing so you can look at ruins of a fancy castle while you mindlessly frag away, spamming your opponents with attacks. Each area of the map was built with a certain amount of verticality. In a game where people can fly straight up into the air, this is important. Enemies can be anywhere, and they will be everywhere. But that means you can too. You can fly to mountaintops or spires to get a view across the map leading you to your next encounter. You can hide in a crevice under a rock so that your opponent doesn't spot you. Hell, by switching levels during combat, you can, and listen because this is the most important one, neutralize a Stone Shaper. Your perfect battlefield depends not only on the class you chose and how you like to play it, but also what your opponent's class is. Whereas a class like Toxicologist can benefit from being inside of a building due to the burst damage of the primary fire and the large AoE of their sorcery, a Conduit can't fight inside of a building just about at all. Their sorcery would just hit the ceiling and they'd have a difficult time strafing while rooted to the floor in an enclosed space. A Stone Shaper can't fight uphill effectively. He also can't fight in a multi-leveled structure. Meet a Stone Shaper in an open field though, and he's going to rock your world. I gotta be the first to make that joke, right? So if you're literally in a bad spot, move. If you're trying to fight in a bad spot, don't. If you can, disengage and get to a position that works to your advantage. You might not win every time, but your chances of victory will go way up fighting on your turf and on your terms. And the fifth and final tip, watch more content. Okay, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking to yourself, this is the part where he asks me to like, comment, and subscribe so that I can see future videos. He's probably even going to ask me to hit the bell icon to be notified whenever he puts up a video. You can feel free to do all those things, but remember, you thought it and I didn't say it. Spoiler alert, I will ask you to do all of those things in a minute or two because those are super important. But when I say watch more content, I mean watch other people. I've played a lot of Spellbreak since launch, but I'll admit I've only been playing since launch. There are amazing players out there that have been casting spells for well over a year. Those players are insane, and you can learn so much just by watching them play on stream or looking up some of their YouTube videos. They're routinely dropping games with 2,000 plus damage, roving through lobbies with insane flicks of the Frost Gauntlet. Try to pick up a couple of things from them as they've actually put 800 hours in to achieve mastery level. You likely won't be able to do things they do mechanically, but you can always try your best to emulate and apply their thought processes. In a game like Spellbreak, a new player is going to watch someone more experienced and wonder if they're even playing the same game, because even their movements are so much faster and smoother than what you think is available to you when you first pick this game up. You can learn effective combinations, tricks to certain runes, and keep up to date on what's happening with the game itself by watching these good folk do what they do best. So make sure you go out there and support them. And me. So, that about wraps it up. I can definitely understand why a new player would have some trouble getting the hang of Spellbreak. The skill ceiling here seems to be really high, and the devs seem to be proud of that fact, as they should be. The name of this studio is Proletariat. That means above all, they value hard work. They've worked hard to provide us this game, and in turn, they expect us to work hard to perfect it. If you implement these tips, they should give you a good enough base to be a marginally successful battle mage. The HoloLens chew up weak Vow Breakers and spit out piles of loot. If you want to be the chewer and not the chewee, keep it locked right here for MrEyeMakePlays TV and for more tips, tricks, and guide videos for Spellbreak. Now this is the part where I ask you to drop that like, leave a comment, and subscribe. You already thought about it, so why haven't you gone ahead and done it already? Alright guys, Mr. EMP out.